BBC Two now explores an amazing underground world in Seeing Through Science.
This was amazing. We found something unique that I had never seen before.
I stopped because I felt something unusual. I had to crawl a little bit, but for sure it was for me a fascinating moment.
Oh, it was a fantastic discovery. In fact, it led scientists to change some of the classical concepts about cave biology.
Romania, Eastern Europe, a beautiful country, rich in caves. I'm here to meet a cave explorer, but I've got to find him first.
Hi, Helen.
Hello, Christy. Nice to see you. Hi.
See you.
This is beautiful. Kristin Lasco is a speleologist.
Speleology is the science of caves. A speleologist can be a biologist, a geologist, a chemist, a physicist, because there are many aspects related with this very special environment.
Does anything live down here?
Normally, when you enter a cave, you can't see nothing. But looking very carefully, you can discover small, very small animals. Some of them walking on the walls, some of them hanging on stalactites.
To find out a bit more about cave wildlife, Christian took me deeper into the cave, to a laboratory. Christian's colleague, Sharman is a cave biologist.
We are trying to analyze to see how much phosphorus, nitrate and nitrite are present in the water in the pools.
Sharman and his team study the things which live in caves and the environment they live in, cave ecosystems.
The cave is the best place to study cave animals, and that's due to the conditions which are very constant in the cave. That means the air temperature and the air humidity, and cave animals are adapted to such very constant conditions. If you take them outside, there always is the danger of killing them, and we don't want to do that while studying them. Caves are known to be places that are very poor in food, and that's why animals are small on one hand, but on the other hand, they also move very slow.
Caves are so poor in food because there are no green plants growing down here at all. Just a few fungi. But I found another food supply. Down here is an important source of food for many cave animals. Bat droppings. This mountain of bat droppings provides the food source for almost everything else living in the cave. And where there's bat droppings... But the bats only roost in the cave. They get their food from outside. So life in this cave relies on animals like bats coming into the cave from outside. If food isn't brought in from outside, then life in the cave is impossible. And that's how scientists thought all cave ecosystems worked. Until Christian discovered the Movile cave, a cave that for millions of years had been completely sealed from the outside world. 5 years ago, he was asked to survey a plateau in southern Romania to see if the land was safe to build on. He had to explore a number of boreholes drilled deep into the ground.
I had the chance to find in a borehole at 18 meters deep, a depth, a small entrance. I had to dig a little bit to go through that, and I found a cave. Yes, it was like a labyrinth, very low, with very low passages. I had to crawl a little bit, but for sure it was for me a fascinating moment, and I was lucky to find a cave here. Next time we came again, but with several colleagues from the Speleological Institute. We had good lights, and we could explore more and to make first surveying of that unusual cave.
It was amazing. First of all, usually in caves you find very few animals and very slow-moving animals. Here, it was amazing to see how rich the fauna is, how fast it moves. This was amazing.
All this life, so there must be a way through to the surface. But after thorough exploration, the scientists still couldn't find one. The cave was completely sealed, totally dark, no plants, and yet lots of animals.
Of course, after this first moment passed, we had to sit back and do some thinking and try to explain what would be the reason of that many animals concentrated in a single spot together. We were trying to understand how this system works, what's the power, what's the source of power that is driving this ecosystem, this very unique ecosystem present in this cave.
The source of power? Well, all living things, including humans, need food for survival. We eat food to give us energy for life. But where does that energy come from? To find out, we can use a food chain. The beef that was eaten last night came from a cow that got its energy for life from the grass it fed on. So the human gets energy from the cow, which gets energy from the grass. All these food chains have something in common, a green plant at the beginning. But plants get their energy for life in a very different way. It's the sun that gives plants energy for life. Green plants use the raw energy of the sun to produce starch that animals can eat, so they're known as primary producers. All food chains have primary producers at their base. So practically every living thing on Earth ultimately relies on the sun's energy to live. At last I arrived at the site of the Movile cave. A cave where life is very different from the surface, and it was time for me to get closer to its secret.
All right.
Okay. The only entrance to the cave is this artificial shaft. The Movile cave has no natural entrance or exit. It was completely sealed. When Christian crawled in from this borehole, it was the first time any living thing had entered from outside for millions of years. And in these dark depths, we know that it's impossible for green plants to live. But beyond this second trapdoor, the cave is teeming with life.
This gate is the last frontier between two very different worlds. So you may stay here better. Any intruder from outside, human beings or animal, can disturb this very fragile environment. But you can come with me.
A world sealed from the surface. A world of total darkness. A world of narrow, twisting tunnels. Yet it's home to so many animals. We're going to find out how that's possible. What is the Movile cave food chain? And what's the energy source at the beginning of the food chain? Well, at the end of the food chain are the predators. Centipedes, spiders, Nepa, and leeches. They feed on isopods, worms and snails. But what do the worms, snails and isopods eat? What else is down here? Water. Some of the tunnels are completely submerged, but as the scientists explored them, they could find no way through to the outside world. All they found were sealed air bells. But what if this water is soaking through the ground and bringing in plant matter from the surface? Well, after many tests, no plant matter, dead or alive, has been found in the water. One thing that has been found is sulfur, dissolved in the water as hydrogen sulfide. This gives the scientists a clue as to the origin of the water.
You see, this area of Romania is rich in sulphurous springs and wells, like this one, where the water's forced out under a huge natural pressure. Like the cave water, this too contains a lot of sulphur. And different tests have shown that this water and the cave water both come from the same place, deep within the earth.
But how can sulphurous water from inside the earth have anything to do with food?
While exploring the cave passages with diving equipment, when we surfaced in some little rooms, which we call air bells, we found something unique that I had never seen before. The whole surface of the water in these rooms was covered by a thin layer of some floating matter. And on that first trip, we didn't know what that is. We took some samples, analyzed them, looked at them under the microscope, and realized that this floating matter is nothing else but a microbial layer It means many microbes staying together, building this floating layer. And later we understood what the function of this microbial matter is. That means these microbes are able to use the energy of hydrogen sulfide and produce food within the cave, which is a very special thing that doesn't happen in any other cave in the world. So that makes the Movile cave so unique.
The whole food chain in this cave is based on chemical energy from sulfur, not on energy from the sun. No surface living animal could survive down here for very long. I certainly wouldn't. It's difficult for me to move about. It's uncomfortable, damp and smelly. And if I turn out my light, this cave will be completely dark. So when the scientists examined the cave animals more closely, perhaps it wasn't so surprising that they found they were all blind.
All the species from caves have no eyes because there is always night, is always black. They don't need to have eyes because they can't see. Instead, the eyes, they use other sense. For example, the olfactive sense. For this is the reason they have long antennas with many hairs, sensitive, which can help them to smell and touch the underground. I can compare this with a blind man which uses his stick to see how to walk, where to put the leg, no?
An animal with long feelers is more likely to survive down here than one with eyes. It's adapted to its environment. And most of the creatures are translucent or very pale, because having colour is no advantage in the pitch black.
Usually when you catch a new animal, you try to see if it's an animal that is known already, or if it's something that hasn't been found before. And in doing so, you look at several characteristics like the structure of the legs, the number of segments of the feelers, the length or the width of their body, and so on and so on. There are people, scientists, that are specialized in doing this type of research, and you have always to ask them because they are the people that know very well this fauna. So they will tell you whether an animal that you found is new for science or if it's something that is known already.
A world-renowned centre of such expertise is in London, at the Natural History Museum. Here, behind the public galleries, is the largest collection of specimens of insects in the world. This collection is a vital resource for the scientists who work here.
When we need to identify a specimen, in order to know what it is, we have to compare it with other specimens of the same group. And unless we have access to material of that species or related species here or in other museums throughout the world, we can't say what it is. We can't tell without comparing it with other specimens.
You see, these specimens are all beetles, but there's a huge amount of variation within the group because they're all different species of beetle. Animals in the same species have identical features and can mate with each other. This is the collection of arachnids, animals with 8 legs.
Well, this is a massive collection. It's probably one of the biggest in the world, if not the biggest. There are at least 100,000 specimens here, and the collection's growing all the time. I think so far there are 35,000 species of spiders described in the world. But it's estimated that there is possibly 70,000 in reality. So there is another 35,000 still to describe. So we have a lot of work to do to find all these spiders and to describe them and to classify them. Well, they come from all over the world, and people go on expeditions to remote places and bring back new and possibly new to science species. We're very glad to have them in our collection.
I collected some of the animals, brought them back to the surface, handed them to some of the scientists that work at the Speleological Institute in Bucharest, and was told a few days later that many of these species are new for science. That means they are species that are not known from any other places in the world.
How many new species did you find altogether?
At this point, we do have 31 new species living in this cave, and there might be some others that we haven't been able to catch so far, but probably around 35 or 40 would be a good figure.
It is very easy to think you've got a new species, but all the time it has already been described. So you have got to be very, very careful and thorough in checking it out, and before you say, yes, this is a new species and I'm going to give it a new name. You cannot use popular names. You can't say the cave spider, because most caves have got spiders of different species. So it's not enough to use that kind of a name. You have to give it a Latin name which is unique.
Does the spider have a name?
Yes, the spider is called Lascona christiani, and it bears the name of Christian Lascu, the person who first discovered the Movile cave.
Well, it was time to say goodbye to Christian Lascu and Romania. But I wasn't going home empty-handed. My plane back to Britain had one very special extra passenger on board, but he was very small, very pale, and pickled in alcohol.
When I first saw it, I really was rather surprised because it had no eyes at all. And comparing it with other normal spiders of this kind, the difference is amazing.
So the collection at the Natural History Museum is now even bigger. Just a remote cave in Romania. But this discovery could have much wider implications. In our solar system, we think the Earth is the only planet able to support life. But the Movile cave has revealed life where we always thought life was impossible.
And lift off.
As scientists search for signs of life on planets like Mars, they concentrate on the surface of the planet. But should they be looking a little deeper? Deeper underground?